companies that really thrive in the end will either own customer experiences and customer interfaces, or they'll own the data.
What are the decacorn and unicorn founders doing differently in their pitch decks, which some of the other startups are not doing?
I think firstly, they're not creating pitches.
What should they do to get to your level so their pitch decks look interesting to you?
I don't need a pitch deck. In fact, I tell people, if you come to me with a pitch deck, it's too late.
What is the stack the founder should think deeply about in today's time?
That's a great question, because I think the stack has evolved a lot.
Why do warehouses coexist with data lakes? Why don't you be data lake first?
So I think till now it's mostly been the idea of build fast and break things fast. I think like smaller data is going to be a big thing.
What are your predictions for AI trends for the next 5 years? Like if there was a GTM playbook by Apoorva Pandhi, what would that say? Hello and welcome to another fantastic episode of Ctrl Alt podcast. We have with us today Apoorva Pandhi, a distinguished venture capitalist, managing director at Zeta Venture Partners. He has extensive experience in investing at Foundation Capital, Lightspeed Ventures, and now at Zeta. His investments are in the up and trending open source AI domain. What makes Apoorva's profile very interesting is his journey from IIT Delhi to his MBA at Wharton, and now here in Silicon Valley, he's one of the most sought after VCs. Let's find out from him what he thinks about the latest and the greatest trends where AI startups or data startups are coming from. Apoorva, welcome to Ctrl Alt podcast.
Thanks for having me here.
Wonderful. Tell us a little bit about your experience in venture capital and why you chose to focus on AI. You could be spending your time thinking about so many domains in enterprise, but why do you choose AI? And what do you think your investment thesis looks like?
Yeah, I think investing is not the reason why I stumbled into AI. My journey in AI was, I would say, back from my startup days. I had founded a company when I was back in business school, back at Wharton, and that had certain aspects of NLP. And then I ended up leading enterprise sales for a company called Quid, where I got the front row seat in the NLP journey. This predated the transformer era, the attention era, because this was back in 2015 timeframe, and it was interesting to see at that time technology obviously couldn't achieve what technology is achieving today. Yeah. But it gave all of us a flavor of like what neural nets could do, and taking that to the market and being able to create applications on top of it. At that time, obviously customers weren't buying AI. They were buying core products for their pain points. And so it was a big challenge to kind of completely abstract out the AI to provide products that customers really wanted. But what we were purely doing was taking unstructured data, whether they're proprietary data or data outside, and applying it to their day-to-day workflows, day-to-day use cases, and really simplifying it for them, which included a lot of like forward deployed people, just like Palantir did and has been doing over the years. But that's what got me excited about the potential of AI. Yeah. And so I'm excited to see the market kind of get to that convergence point where like you're selling AI ML powered solutions, but that shouldn't be front and center. That should definitely improve the product. That should improve the outcomes. The entrepreneurs and founders are building real products for customer pain points.
So you've lived through the AI winter. You know the problems of hard selling AI. And now you're at the peak of the AI bubble, or probably. Or some people say you're at the beginning of the AI bubble, right? Yep. So, and you have your thesis about how people should be building AI products. So let's say I'm a founder and I have a startup idea I want to pitch to you. How will you advise me to hone my pitch to find the right product to work on? To define my MVP, because you just now said that people are just building AI for the sake of it. What is your product-centric thesis?
I think a lot of fundamentals don't change from historically. Like a lot of fundamentals mean that or direct towards like really getting to know the customer pain points first. So spending time and different founders and different entrepreneurs have come from different angles to the problem. Like a lot of times founders build products around pain points that they've seen themselves firsthand, because a lot of them are deeply technical and they're solving problems for deeply technical users. So they are kind of solving problems for themselves, or they are building products for people that they've interfaced with. So like say an engineer is interfaced with a solutions architect, or they've interfaced with a sales persona, or they've intercepted with a customer success persona, and they might end up building a horizontal solution that addresses any of those use cases. But at least they've interfaced with those things. A lot of times founders come with the idea of like, let's do an analysis of all possible markets and then deep dive into which markets are kind of surface to the top as kind of the white spaces, and then like do a lot of homework, kind of understanding that market, understanding those pain points. I've seen some successes over there, but I feel like a lot of successes come from like pain points that are either yours or that you've interfaced with, or your co-founder might have interfaced with. So it has to be kind of a pain point that you've interfaced with at some point in your life. There are exceptions where people kind of discover markets and discover pain points, but I think it all goes back to like talking to enough practitioners across the board, not just in like users or buyers in web scale companies or enterprises, but kind of talking to like people in that domain within mid-market and all kinds of companies to understand like, is this a broad pain point in the market, and like where should they start addressing this pain point? How should they think about it? So thinking about like the pain points first, and thinking about like what should be the shape of the product, thinking about what should be the workflows, and I would say then thinking about technology. If it's a hard problem to solve, then a lot of technologists come with the problem or approach the problem technology first. And I think it should be technology in the end. I believe that like if you're backing a strong technologist, they'll figure out how to solve a hard problem technologically. But I think what's even more interesting and more important to me is that do they understand customer pain points? Do they understand what's real, what's not? How are they thinking about the product? How are they iterating? How are they taking the feedback back, and how are they thinking of mental models of go-to-market, even if it's early?
So if you look at the first time founder, let's say people who you are funding right now, like early seed stage, probably the product is not yet ready, and the unicorn and decacorn founders, the seasoned founders have a network with whom they can brainstorm with people like you, but the early stage founders don't. What should they do to get to your level so their pitch decks look interesting to you?
Again, I think no one should think about pitch decks when they are talking to me. I think they should all think about what I need to see and what they need to be comfortable about is, do they have enough conviction in a pain point and in an approach that they would want to spend the next 10 years of their life, at least the next 10 years of their life, focused on it and solving it.
And how do you think 10 years ahead? How do you envision a world which is ahead in technology 10 years from now? How do you do that?
And I think it's also like you have a vision in mind, but at the same time you start with climbing a small mountain first. And that small mountain that you climb is like what's based on the timing of the market and what's feasible today, like what problem should you solve today.
So when you did your first startup, AI was in the winters, but you still went ahead and did your thing in Quid. What gave you that conviction of the pain point?
I think that might not be the best example. I feel like because I got really enamored by the technology and based on...
But for a good reason.
For a good reason. But at the same time, it was very fascination with the technology, and we tried to find like pain points in the market that would match that product.
So hammer looking for a nail.
Hammer looking for a nail. But I think over time we did find, since technology was so early, at the end of the time you could curate a product on top. And the product curation was more effort than the technology itself, because technology was already there at that point. So we were able to find a lot of interesting markets. And to an early stage founder, I would say the same thing, right? Like I didn't know healthcare as well. I didn't know financial services as well. But what I just did was hustled hard to like do cold outbounds, like find warm connections. But if you know like what to ask for and who to reach out to, like you basically need to have clear asks of people in your network. Like the other 3 people that are connected to you, I think they are the relevant people for me to like talk to vet my ideas and to just get feedback from, and just like ask for like those clear, clean introductions versus saying I need help. And I think people help if they are given a clear ask.
So if I'm a founder trying to fine tune my problem statement, before I come to you and I ask you for leads, are you in a position to help such founders?
Yeah, I think in my case, if I feel that I may or may not know them for a long time.
Yeah.
If I've known them for a long time, I would have a point of view on like how strong a practitioner they are,
Yeah.
and whether they want or are excited to be founders or not.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then I would really help them think through like the other 2 or 3 areas you're excited about. Let
Yeah.
me connect you to enough people in each of these areas. So, and let me be a fly on the wall, so that I can like just listen to the conversations and see like where is user appetite in what
Right.
markets, and then
Right.
get excited about one of those markets and maybe like help them incorporate the company and invest in them. So that's one strategy. The other strategy is meeting net new people. And I think the benefit of kind of going upstream, which is like investing in people's time and investing time and energy in people and resources in people before investing the capital in
Right.
their company,
Right.
is that you get to understand how product centric they are.
Yeah.
You really get to understand like do they have the drive to be a founder, get to understand can they think beyond technology. You get to see like how they have interactions with people that you connect them to. I'm happy to do that, but I think it takes time for you to get to know people, and I think
Right.
that's the beauty of kind of going upstream, where you can spend the time, especially in domains that you're focused on. And that's why we're a focused fund. We're
Yeah.
not boiling the ocean by like saying like we'll go and like talk to all practitioners in all spaces.
Yeah.
So I've done a lot of horizontal applications for different functional personas. I've done some bit of healthcare as well, but my historically my bread and butter has been infra. I've done a lot of AI infra and data infra, but like there are other partners in the fund, like another partner Dylan, he does a lot of life sciences. So his major has been intersection of AI and bio and life sciences, and he's unpacking like more intersections between AI and sciences. So he's looking at the intersection of AI and chemistry now. And other aspects. So that's how we kind of dividing and conquering, where each of us kind of look at our thesis areas, look at our sweet spots, and really go in with a prepared mind that this is where we feel the trends are going, and then accordingly find practitioners who are kind of solving hard problems, either as open source maintainers or practitioners in web scale companies or people who are researchers in AI labs. And really help them figure out what ideas they want to pursue, and the best case is like helping them incorporate along with them, and which basically helps us get a right to invest in the company.
Yeah. Tell us 1 or 2 success stories which you're very proud of, which kind of defined your investment thesis. Like you like the founder, you like the way they did things, and how you helped them out. And the end result is very successful.
So one example is a company called Tabular. This is open source Apache Iceberg. It's a well-known data format. It's a open source table format for data, which helps you essentially manage data lakes effectively. Origin of the tool was at Netflix, and very similar to our thesis, right? Going and finding areas that I feel should be disrupted, and people who are working on hard problems. So met Ryan when he was at Netflix, and he was the one who kind of built Iceberg at Netflix, and he'd built Iceberg to solve the pain points of data engineers who were working on Hadoop and Hive and were trying to like move away from Hadoop and Hive at Netflix. And so he came up with this idea of Iceberg, and after coming up with this idea, it was so successful at Netflix that they open sourced it. And Netflix has this tradition of open sourcing frameworks historically, and Iceberg was one of many. And was able to kind of see that Iceberg was just open sourced, and Ryan is working on this. So I was curious to see like how he's thinking about the future with this technology. And so we started to talk and really understood like his vision around creating a product around this. And so it was part of that early journey where he spun out of Netflix and created a company called Tabular around it. This was 3 years back. I was fortunate to be an investor in the seed round, and really worked with Ryan and helped on the go-to-market side, because a big question for a lot of open source companies is like, what is the commercial product that you need to build on top? That actually is bought by organizations, that's bought by teams, because open source at the end of the day is great for ICs or individual contributors.
Yeah.
So while Iceberg had a great community in data engineers, those wouldn't be the buyers of Tabular. And so what should Tabular stand for? And Ryan had this very interesting viewpoint of the market at that point, that today most of the data is in the warehouse, and it's Snowflake like has everyone's data stored in them and owns the data. But that thing will get unbundled at some point, and which is happening right now. There's a coexistence of warehouse and data lake.
Yeah.
And all the data in the data lake has to be managed in some way or form, because organizations need to consume it. And so his idea of like Tabular at that time was, can this be the neutral storage? Because neutral storage being that it could interplay with any sources of data. It could be, the data could be in your S3, or it could be in your R2, or it could be in any of your databases, but it could kind of ingest data from any of those sources. And the storage is neutral because it could interplay with any compute on top. But unlike a warehouse where storage and compute is together, and so you kind of like locked in to a large extent. Over here it was trying to be neutral and unlock you from kind of just using one kind of compute.
So compute and infra moving towards the data.
The
Data is center. So it's a new world, whole
new
world.
Yes. And so he had this bold vision and created a huge community around Iceberg. Figured out not just the open source adoption of Iceberg, but also figured out go-to-market for Tabular. And I was kind of very fortunate to be a part of that journey with him. And within 3 years of existence, it got acquired by Databricks for north of $2 billion. So it was exciting to be a part of that journey with him.
Amazing. So if I were to study your past, you are interacting with successful founders who built a successful company, and now they are thinking about their next gig. Is that right?
So Ryan was never a founder before.
But he was at Netflix.
He was at Netflix. He was a practitioner. He was more. He was a data engineer, and he had led teams before. Before that, he was at Cloudera, and so he led teams over there. In fact, the origins of Iceberg was in Cloudera, and then ended up like getting life at Netflix. So he's always been a practitioner. This is the first time he was a founder.
Okay. So you track people who are creating great technology inside companies as well.
So people could be creating technologies, or people could be like thinking about hard problems and like working on addressing that internally.
How do you reach out to them, or how do they reach out to you? Because all the time in the networking events, when I'm with entrepreneurs, they're like, I have this idea. I know this is a pain point. I've been seeing this for 6 years now. And what? They come to me. So what do I tell them?
You should just send them their profile to me, and if I like it, I just make the introduction.
But they don't have a pitch deck yet.
That's fine. I don't need a pitch deck. In fact, I tell people, if you come to me with a pitch deck, it's too late.
Okay. All right. Another thing I observed with the Gen AI boom, this whole data and AI ML stack people used to talk about, they suddenly start talking about the Gen AI stack, where AI ML is sitting somewhere. So what is the stack the founders should think deeply about in today's time?
That's great. That's a great question, because I think the stack has evolved a lot, and I think a lot of companies are trying to think about how to remove those silos to accommodate for not just their organization, because decision makers and leaders have to also be organized in a certain way, but also like what tools to kind of centralize around. To kind of oversimplify it, like historically, the ML infra, which was tools to like build models and deploy models, and that time, by the way, models were either predictive structured models or they were deep learning models. A lot of those tools were being bought by data scientists and ML platform teams. Data scientists creating the models, ML platform teams building the tooling and the infra and deploying them in the enterprise or in web scale companies or in smaller companies if they could afford them. So the idea of like AI ML at that time was mostly that infra, or it was deep learning, which was applications like computer vision. Otherwise, everything outside of that was data, which was like big data infra, or it was BI. Those are kind of the key silos at that point. I think the way things have evolved now is like there's a lot of unstructured data, and obviously the emphasis of that unstructured data has been text till now. So that doesn't mean that structured data goes away. The big question is like, how does structured and unstructured data interplay and work together? If I were to just talk about like the oversimplified stack today, there's this big compute layer, and the compute layer is dominated by the likes of NVIDIA and many others, which is the raw processing power, which is powering a lot of these workloads. On top of that is the cloud infrastructure, which is packaging these workloads and providing them as services to different companies. Adjacent to that is data infrastructure, which is basically the primitives of data that enable you to like not just like train your models, but also like fine tune your models and make them ready for prime time. And again, data infrastructure is not just for modeling. It's not just for ML or AI. It's also for BI. People are also using it for analytics. On top of that is the foundation model layer. And it could be the foundation model layer is the current model layer, but it could be also like classical ML models from the past. But the foundation model layer is basically open source models like DeepSeek or Meta or closed source models like OpenAI or Anthropic. Then you also have the tooling layer on top, which is the picks and shovels that developers are using to kind of deploy these models in production in their applications. These include things like orchestration platforms like LangChain, or vector databases like VV8 and Pinecone, and so on. And then on top of that is the application layer. And application layers could be taking in an existing model API and building on top of it, or it could be an application that could be building their own model from scratch. So we've seen different flavors of application layers. Like we've seen domain-specific application layers like life sciences, where they've had to build their own models just because that data wasn't available on the web. And so they had to generate their own data. Or robotics, would had to collect the data from the physical world because again, that you can't really use off-the-shelf data. Or like consumer companies like Adept or Inflection or Character, which are more B2C companies that built their own generalized models from scratch and were very capital intensive. Because they build their own generalized models from scratch. I think as an early stage fund, if we look at the opportunity areas, top down, we see like few opportunity areas. One is data and cloud infrastructure. Like what are the new primitives that are coming up that are supporting these new workloads? And anyways, how is the stack evolving given that the current stack is becoming too expensive to use? And then the tooling layer, the picks and shovels layer, I think a lot of investors have really over-invested in that space, so that's become very noisy. So while we've been fortunate to be in some of the winners in that market, we're kind of evaluating that space very closely and not being super active in that space. And then is the application layer, and the application layer is anywhere from like horizontal applications to things being built for different functional personas to vertical applications that are verticals of like different market verticals. Could be healthcare, could be financial services, could be retail, could be legal tech, could be manufacturing, could be supply chain, any of that. So that's how I would stack it up.
If you look at the stack again closely, how would you prioritize your layer where you want to invest? You say the application stack or the tooling stack a little bit crowded. So what does Zeta think? What do you think?
So I'm personally spending more time in the data layer and the cloud layer as well as the horizontal application layer. I've done some bit of vertical applications, but I would say my sweet spot is healthcare within that. But if I were to pick another person at Zeta, Dylan, for example, who's my partner, his focus is mostly vertical. So he's doing more life sciences and healthcare, and he's doing chemistry, he's doing supply chain, he's doing other areas of vertical applications. That's what he would focus on. Versus if I would take Jocelyn, who's another partner of mine, her background has been in cloud infrastructure and ML. And so she'll look at a lot of like ML infra, the toolings, the picks and shovels and the tooling. And also the cloud infrastructure layer. So I would say everyone divides their time rather than like everyone doing everything. We have our like own like sweet spots, but at the same time, if you find something in another space where we have a long relationship with the founder, then everyone comes together to evaluate it together. So it's a very collaborative culture of working together.
Very nice. I love that. You're collaboratively evaluating. On that note, if some of the VC firms have this habit of putting the problems out openly, and they organize maybe a hackathon, or maybe they just have founders pick one of these and work on it and come back and submit a deck. So what are some of the problems you want to share with the founders which they at this time 2025 you want them to work on?
I think there are a couple of problems. Let me start from the bottom of the stack again. Like within the data layer, I see again I have like strong convictions loosely held that helps me map out the space. It helps me have a point of view. but that doesn't mean that I can't learn something new from founders. If founders come and like tell me like this is how a problem should be solved, or this is a new space that you haven't thought about, at least knowing the landscape today, I'm able to understand this is a white space and this founder is special. I think that's an evaluation of the founder themselves, but like at least knowing what the space is. So within the data space, like for example, like any infrastructure space, whether it's like cloud infrastructure or data infrastructure, they all go through their cycles of consolidation and fragmentation. And there's been consolidation around two big companies today. Platforms. So like there have been two platforms in the data space today. One is Snowflake, the other is Databricks. There's a lot of fragmentation on the periphery of these companies. So if you look at Snowflake, downstream of Snowflake, there's so much fragmentation in terms of data quality, there's lineage, there's cataloging, there's BI tooling. If you look at Databricks, there's so much fragmentation around Databricks as well. And that's why these companies become so acquisitive. Like if you've seen like recently.
There's an opportunity there to get acquired, or there's an opportunity to fix the fragmentation?
So I think one opportunity is there to know, like I personally don't like adding to the fragmentation. I'd rather invest in primitives that could be standalone in the future. If they do get acquired just because the platform teams want to extend into that area is a different thing. An example of that is Tabular. Like they were not adding to the fragmentation, but they were kind of trying to like be a core player in the data lake market in places where people don't want platforms. But Databricks saw the opportunity and felt that they should also exist and acquire that particular community as well. So that could happen. But my intention is to not add to that fragmentation. So I would rather look at trends that completely shift the market and change the market. So one example is that since there is a coexistence of the warehouse and the lake, there's a lot, and the reason the lake is interesting right now is because customers don't want their data locked in the warehouse. They don't want, while it was done for simplicity, it was done for efficiency, it was done for scale in the past. I think today it's adding to the cost because you're throwing all kinds of data into the warehouse and it is being locked into the warehouse. And they also like the idea of like ownership, that they own their own data. Also with lakes, what's going to happen in the future, in my opinion, is that there's going to be common data lakes for multiple use cases. So observability going forward should have a common lake. BI should actually work on a data lake or should be derived from a data lake. There should be common data lakes for all of these. So I'm of the proponent that if the market is shifting or will coexist with the warehouse market, what kind of primitives and tooling need to exist for the lake that will make it effective for companies to kind of manage that data? Because if they're owning their own data, we're taking the simplicity away of like of the platform. So what do you provide to them in tooling over there that will improve their life? A few examples of that we've already backed are companies like Tabular, companies like MotherDuck. MotherDuck's philosophy is more smaller data as well, that like not all data needs to be taken from the lake, but a little bit of that data, if it can be processed at the edge or in a serverless way, then it's kind of, you can kind of get to insights very quickly. And so that's a different philosophy. But like we've backed few companies in that, but I think there's a lot to be done in that space, from being able to like manage the security of that data, from access controls to cataloging of that data to managing orchestration, because there are going to be so many complex pipelines that are going to be built for BI and AI use cases. You have to figure out how to orchestrate those pipelines, how to build and manage compute first pipelines, because a lot of data will have to be processed not just in Spark, but will also be processed in Flink, and all of those will be real-time data pipelines. So there needs to be like solutions to manage that for the lake. So that's one area.
Why do warehouses coexist with data lakes? Why don't you be data lake first?
So I think till now it's mostly been the idea of like build fast and break things fast, and that's why as the world moved from ETL to ELT, where you're transforming data later, you're not transforming data before. The idea was like, let's just throw all the data into the warehouse and then we'll think of transformation downstream. And that's why DBT exists, because you're trying to transform data downstream. And that's why it's simple, because like you don't have to think about it. You don't have to put any upfront effort. You just throw all the data into the warehouse. And since it's full stack, it is like compute and storage, you can actually do the computation in the warehouse itself. So it just adds to simplicity and scale. But over time, people realize that like if you're throwing all the data into the warehouse, data quality is an afterthought, right? Or you can't fix quality. You can fix quality 30-40%. It's also optimistic, but you can't fix the entire issue with quality, because if you're missing data, it can't be an afterthought.
Yeah.
And the second piece was cost. Like people realize as the data sets are growing over time, they are still like continuing to like kind of throw it into the warehouse. It's costly. Like you can't like have all your data somewhere else. It's costly to kind of maintain.
This is exponentially growing market.
Yeah. So
because a lot of these companies that they are having terabytes of data coming in for every day.
And I would say like a lot of like DuckDB or MotherDuck's point of view is, which I agree with, that not all use cases are big data use cases. In fact, a lot of use cases don't require big data, because for some BI or an ad hoc BI use cases, and even smaller models coming up and becoming more mainstream in the market, like I think like smaller data is going to be a big thing, with no pun intended, but there'll be new tooling that has to be figured out for smaller data sets to be able to be agile with that data. So that's one area. The other area is like, I feel like as the pipelines are becoming more complex with both BI and ML workloads, and like Lake is becoming kind of more prominent in the entire ecosystem, I think there's this idea of like data is being considered more like a product. And it is a lot of like software engineering principles are being mimicked. So like just like how code was tested and deployed, there was sprints, there was PRDs in code. Like the same idea should be applied to data. That those first principles, because then if you do that upstream, then you can control for quality. And that's when like it also affects governance as well, because a lot of like heads of security don't get visibility around lineage. Like when people talk about lineage, it's basically downstream of the warehouse. It's not from the source. So I think it kind of solves for two problems. One, it solves for quality. The other is solves for visibility. So we backed a company called Gable in that space, which is basically applying software engineering principles to data pipelines. And it's solving for these two problems of data quality by shifting left, and also improving governance by giving observability or lineage from the source itself. So that's another area which I think not a lot more can exist in that space, because if you were to like apply software engineering principles to data pipelines, this is just the starting point. You could do much more, just how software engineering companies did.
That's amazing.
And then I would say the third area, which is also an interesting area, is I would say data generation and curation for modern AI workloads. Like we've been talking about like models reaching their scaling limits with web data. And then we talk about like these organizations owning massive amounts of data focused on their domain, where like we might get the weights from DeepSeeks of the world and might get their reasoning traces, but you still have to like, to make it more domain specific, you still have to do fine tuning on using that data, using that domain data, using that company's data. All of that data has to be curated, because like till now, companies were very much dependent on annotation players to kind of do human annotation.
But it's not possible.
With all of this data. So how do you provide tools in the hands of the companies and the practitioners itself, so that like they are able to like curate the data themselves?
What kind of data does a company like Google deal with? Is it is the word peta, or is it?
It's petabytes,
Petabytes. And are you talking about them building their own tools, or startups who build tools being acquired by Google? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm talking about like more startups coming up in the domain of like Scale AI and Labelbox. Those companies are existing companies. But like, how would you, rather than like taking the data from the customer, how do you give the tool to the customer to curate their own data? And data curation is not isolated, right? You have to complete the feedback loop with model outputs. So you feed the data in, you figure out what are the right data to feed in, then you're able to get the feedback loop in terms of model evaluation, and then you feed that back into the curated data to know like what should be the right data going forward. That's with existing data. But the second is data generation. There's so much appetite around data generation now, where like it's a lot of that data is not documented, it's not like captured digitally. How do you create data for different domains, whether it's life sciences, whether it's manufacturing? There's like a lot of data that has to be collected from the real world.
So all unstructured data at one point will be structured data.
All unstructured data in the world will finally be structured data. And there's also this aspect of like the data is today is coming, a lot of that data is being captured or collected from the US market. What about out of the US market? What about countries like India? that have access to a lot of data that is not being captured here, that's not being used for training models.
We avoid biases, or we
avoid biases, and also
be very contextual.
Yeah, but it also increases models' capabilities, because we've seen that, like, with better curated data, it's not just about training; it's also about inference. Like, if you're able to give more contextual, better curated data at inference, it increases the capabilities of the model.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
On that note, what are your predictions for AI trends in 2025, 26, or maybe for the next 5 years? What are some trends you think will?
Yeah, I think I spoke a lot about data, but I think there's a lot happening at the application layer that we spoke about. So my predictions are more on the application layer. I think one prediction is, and prediction is kind of a weird word, I would say, like, where I see the trends going. I think one of the trends is more around multimodal applications. But today, like, you're mostly interacting with an application using language. Going forward, like, as like these like on-device voice models have become like more accurate and low latency, I think voice is becoming increasingly getting adopted. I don't think voice would be the only thing getting ubiquity, just because everyone doesn't like to speak to things. But there could be like image-based things or like video-based things that could actually be the interaction format.
I think if you think about multimodal, it has to be ambient.
It has to be ambient, yeah. The second is, I think that everyone is going to interface with the web through agents.
Yes.
I think today we're talking about agents. Today we're talking about agents in the context of companies and B2B. But I think as a consumer, like, I find it pretty hard. Like, I've been trying to plan travel more recently with my family, not work travel, but family travel and vacation, or like grocery shopping, or like any of those things that require search. It requires search. It requires consultation with friends or people or peers who've kind of done that, and it also requires actions. All of that is agentic. Like, and if those agents are on device, and if they have context or memory around your data, then they know your preferences. And they should be able to, like, not just like retrieve knowledge based on your preferences, but they should also be able to take action based on your preferences.
So what are the interfaces going to look like? If everything is agentic and I don't have to go to a search anymore, or I don't have to click on an app anymore, you're saying voice or no voice? What is it exactly?
Could be multimodal, right?
Multimodal
could multimodal in the sense that type in your thing, or you could your query, or you could like talk to it, or if you've opened up a website, for example, Expedia, for finding something, then it automatically pops up and tells you what can I do for you. It should be multimodal, in my opinion, because at the end of the day, companies that really thrive in the end will either own customer experiences and customer interfaces, or they'll own the data. So those are the two things that they can own. They won't own models. No one wants to own models right now. Everyone is working with brokers at the end of the day. That's the second one. The third is, just like scaling laws have been achieved in generalized models where everyone is talking about, like, it doesn't make sense to throw more data at more compute. Like, you need to kind of be more creative with R&D, just as how DeepSeek proved to the market. Similarly, I think there have to be like this aspect of scaling laws in other domains where data is being collected.
What are the current scaling laws, if I may ask, which people live by? It's
too early right now for like domain-specific companies to have scaling laws, like, because people are still trying to figure out, like, where do you get the data from, and B, how do you train that model, because a lot of that data looks like natural language, but if you take proteins, for example, today the idea of like predicting an antibody or coming up with an antibody is basically like applying the transformer architecture to protein sequences, which is like single dimensional. But proteins are not one dimensional. Proteins are multidimensional. So you have to apply multidimensional modes on top of that to be able to get the right outputs. So you have to basically create a multidimensional model. So people are trying to figure, like, what are the dimensions, what kinds of data, and then based on that they are trying to create models from scratch, which won't be the models created by OpenAI or any of these other players, because they're not focused on domains. So companies focused on those domains that are actually thinking of those applications in those domains are trying to create those models. And I think with that data generation, there will be scaling laws for those smaller models as well. And it's yet to be seen. And I think that's going to be like upfront, like it's going to be up and center in the next few years, because that's where the market is headed.
So these
forward.
are private LLMs you're talking about, or these are you're right. These are domain specific.
So these still be built by vendors, where vendors will be going to, let's say, pharma companies to help them design drugs better. I think private LLMs come in the domain of like people taking a llama or a DeepSeek and then fine-tuning that with their own internal data, which is different than like creating like models for domains where you need to kind of collect net new data just for training itself, which is different.
Got it.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. I wanted to ask you, you work with so many founders, what is the kind of GTM approach you see in good founders and you want to guide founders to adopt? Like if there was a GTM playbook by Apoorva Pandhi, what would that say?
So it's a very loaded question, because there's so many aspects to GTM, and it's very contextual based on the product, the market, and like what pain points you're solving.
So in the domains you're investing in.
But yeah, just to answer that question, right? I think the first thing that matters is like even before founders have products, I think the great founders end up thinking of like early mental models of going to market even before like building the product. And the reason that helps is because as you're building the product, you're identifying the right design partners for yourself who are talking to you and also actively giving you design partner feedback in building your product.
Why would a design partner want to work with a first-time founder?
I think it's a combination of like it's like a burning pain point that if someone solves it, like then I should be the one to benefit from it.
Like your practitioners give you the problems. Right?
Yes. Yeah. The second one is this is a friend. I want to help this friend. He's a great practitioner. Maybe if you build something, then I want to be a part of that journey. The third is introduction through a friend. They just want to help out a friend, but I think but they also feel this is a relevant thing if it's built, because a lot of times until you build a product, people don't value it as much. Like sometimes they're like, oh, this is a pain point, you're building it for this pain point, I'll try it out if it works. But many times it's like, let's see what you come up with. I understand the theory behind what you're building, but I can't relate to it till I try it out. And once you try out something which you can't relate to, but theoretically it sounds good to you, that's when like it clicks. You're like, oh, this is how it works. This is how it'll actually solve my pain points. The idea of like ICP is like, it's an iterative process that you kind of come up with like 5, you kind of work with them, realize that maybe 3 of the 5 are not a good fit, because either they're big companies asking for too much, or there's like one company which is really not a good fit in terms of what I'm building. So basically there's just 2 left. So then I add more to the mix, and then based on that I figure out this kind of company and this kind of persona is kind of a better fit for me, and then I just like double down and kind of build for them.
So that'll be a repeat use case or a hero use case.
It'll be the first use case, it'll be the insertion use case. And then I'm trying to like find companies that's not just like, while I might just start building for mid-market first, or I might just start building for enterprise first, at least like in the design partnership phase, it's better to have companies of all shapes and sizes, just because like you're then building for scalability. And it also like helps you collect references as well. Like this is how a big company works, and I'm working with them as a design partner. Let me help you as a small company, because then the small company values the big company's workflows. While you're not sharing those workflows, you're valuing the fact that if a company can help a big company, they can also help us. Yeah.
Wonderful. One of the biggest pain points of AI startup founder, I personally feel, I've spoken to so many of them in the last 3 years, is hiring good AI talent.
Right.
Tell us what your playbook is on hiring AI talent for a first-time founder. And why do you think the unicorn and decacorn founders are so good at it?
Yeah. I think hiring talent at the earliest stages is, talent is a broad term, but if I would simplify that, at the earliest stages of the seed stage of a company, you need founding engineers. And those founding engineers could be front end, back end, full stack, or ML engineers.
So rare to find.
Yes, but a lot of like people who are, I think that's an assessment of the founder as well, where can they attract talent? And one kind of talent that they attract is from their network, people that have worked with them or worked for them. A lot of them are like such strong talent magnets that people respect them so much as practitioners that they want to leave their jobs to kind of work for them. I think you need to stand out as a founder as well in today's market. So I think a lot of high quality founders have a way to stand out where they're thought leaders. So they talk a lot about like their vision for the market. They talk a lot about the pain points. They either write content or they are like
doing workshops, giving keynotes or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that attracts people because if you're a thought leader, people want to like work with a thought leader. And then the third kind of people are those that come through like networks. The networks could be friends, could be other employees who are happy working with you, could be like investors. In the market today, I think the sentiment is that one side of the sentiment is if a person really wants to work for a big company only and wants to make a lot, it's really hard to take away that person from that big company.
Yeah.
But people who are willing to like take a cut to just get that experience in an AI first company or an AI native company, there are many people like that in the market.
So do investors like you help with this matchmaking?
Yes, we do. But like at the end of the day, as an early investor, you have to figure out like what areas you want to focus on. So for instance, like if you're a platform fund, you could potentially have a platform fund is like a big fund. You could always have like a centralized talent team and a centralized go-to-market team that is helping you introduce customers. But I don't think that works for early stage, and I don't think it works for a small fund. The small fund's approach is very white glove, where you're actually working directly with the company and you're helping them on things that are most important for them. So the way I think about it is like rather than saying that I help on all fronts, I definitely help on go-to-market because that's something that I enjoy doing. That's something is my history as well, where I've led go-to-market before. And so in that case, I'm able to pitch on their behalf. I kind of become the extension of their go-to-market teams. I also help them get introduced to design partners who potentially become customers going forward. So that's where I over-index on. Talent, I think, is a combination of like finding people in my network if I can, or like if they want me to talk to a candidate who really wants to understand the market landscape, who really wants to understand my reason to invest in the company, I'll leave everything else to like help close that candidate the same day. So I think I wouldn't claim that I do everything in recruiting, but I think there are multi-stage funds that have centralized recruiting teams that work for scale. I don't think it's the best approach, in my opinion, for seed stage, because seed stage founders need the context that only investors, direct investors in those companies have.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. On that note, do you have any strategic advice for people to build companies in the AI space? I know you're very big on product centricity and you repeated that so many times, but along with that or in addition to that, what else do you have to say?
So I think in the AI space, the few other things beyond product centricity and beyond having early mental models of go-to-market, I think the other two things that help, I think I like people or founders who don't just talk about AI, but are actually actively experimenting with AI tools on the side with access to so many APIs from these model providers. It's easy to experiment on the side, and people who are passionate about AI, they are not just using AI to build their business, but they are using like AI for hobby projects. And the last piece is, I'd say like for domains, like when we invest in application domains, it helps to back bilingual founders. When I say bilingual founders, it's like one founder who's from that domain and the other founder who's like a technical and AI person, because then kind of they bring the best of the worlds together, and you're not reinventing a lot of things in business models because they really understand the business of that domain.
So Apoorva, let's do a quick and fun rapid fire round. Okay. What is that one AI app you can totally not live without?
I'd say that should be Spotify.
And why do you say that?
Well, it doesn't sound like an AI app, but it has recommendations. It has ML running in the background, and I think the best AI apps or products are those that shouldn't have AI in the forefront. They should be hidden away, and you should be able to lead your life without knowing that there's AI involved. Anything
magical is sophisticated technology.
Yeah,
right?
and I think I love the fact that it gives me like all my music recommendations, like all my taste of music, and helps me discover new and more. Hard to live without music, right?
Wonderful. And if you could reboot one technology trend in the past, what would that be?
It's a good question. I think given where research is right now and the fact that it's not in the open, it's not being as published, just because like there's so many proprietary model companies around. They've managed to hire most of the great researchers, and they're not talking about what they're doing. And then we saw this glimpse from DeepSeek, without over-indexing on it.
Oh my God.
That like people have actually published what they've done. And historically we saw this big trend around open source collaboration, which we saw in the world of Linux and GitHub, that led to a lot of advancements. I think people were actually moving forward very quickly because people were adding to each other's knowledge, and there were more advancements in a very short period of time. And I think we're missing out on that today. And if you can kind of marry the advancements in AI with open source collaboration, and not just like one or two companies leading it, not just Meta and DeepSeek, but like even if like OpenAI and Anthropic kind of like add to it and other companies add to it, then I think AI will move at a faster pace, and there'll be a net positive for our country.
Bring down the barriers basically. Wonderful. So if there's one all-time favorite tech celebrity, you'd wanna
tech celebrity.
Not tech celebrity, I would say just celebrity you admire. You wanna have dinner with them. Who would that be?
Well, I admire many tech celebrities or technologists. But I think one of the biggest technologists, at least in my industry, has been Alan Turing, who's known for the Turing machine, who's also known for the Turing test.
Amazing.
And in fact,
so fundamental
to modern computing. So if I got a chance to have dinner with him, I'd ask him that, did he imagine that AI would evolve in the way it evolved today? And does he have any concerns about the ethical aspects of AI? And given where it's today, what does he advise about like what could be the applications, disruptive applications going forward? So I think it'll be great to hear from him, from the origin itself.
And if I were to give you a choice to live in a world which is run by AI or without, what would you choose?
Well, that's easy. I think like AI gives a lot of benefits. It is going to transform a lot of industries, like no doubt. But I don't think you can take human beings away. Like you can't take the empathy, you can't take the nuanced thinking. You can't take any of that away from your day-to-day life. So I would say the best world would be a world where you could, like, human beings could collaborate with machines and lead to the best outcomes. I kind of think of it as the relationship that Iron Man or Tony Stark had with Jarvis. Where Jarvis had like pretty advanced capabilities, but it was always like hand in glove with Tony Stark. So that's what I think.
On that amazing note, visiting Tony Stark and Iron Man. Thank you so much for your time on Control Alt podcast. Here we are with Apoorva Pandhi, one of those amazing technologists, venture capitalists, helping reboot the technology landscape right from Silicon Valley. Thank you so much, and we'd love to have you back again.
Thank you.